Amazon announced it's launching free storage for unlimited photos. And let's say you're the PM for Google Photos. What would you do? Hey everyone, welcome back to another Exponent Product Management mock interview. My name's Kevin Wei, and on today's show we have Halim. Before we get started, Halim, can you just tell the audience who you are?
Yeah, sure. Hi, Kevin. I'm currently a product manager at Facebook. I've been at Facebook for 4 years. I worked on Facebook profiles. I launched and kickstarted Facebook avatars internally. Worked on virtual reality for 2 years, and currently I'm working on Marketplace. It's a product that helps workers find work in the middle of the pandemic. Previous to Facebook, I was a founder. Launched a couple of companies, one of which got acquired by a coupon website in London.
Very exciting. And I mean, Halim is being humble. He also has many great offers. He's coming from the course. He studied the Exponent course and currently has offers at Google and Stripe. So congratulations. I'm really happy to hear that, Halim.
Thanks.
Today, let's do a strategy question for this mock interview. So here's the question. Amazon announced it's launching free storage for unlimited photos. And let's say you're the PM for Google Photos. What would you do?
Great. Thanks for the question. I'll take a minute. I'll take a few moments to gather my thoughts, if that's okay.
Great.
Great. Awesome. Before I jump in, I do have a few clarifying questions, if that's okay. The first one is about the what would you do? Are we focusing here on a holistic strategy? Effectively, we're not talking about many product improvements like A/B tests, but rather large projects we would take on to basically counter that risk. Correct?
Yeah, so you're the PM. I'm just really curious about what you would do when you hear this announcement from Amazon. And if you have any big ideas, I'd love to hear what they are.
Awesome. That sounds great. And constraint-wise, I am going to assume that we're operating within the realm of the possible, but we have a large team, and we can create things at scale. So I shouldn't. I'm not going to limit myself with when it comes to ideas. Does that sound good?
Yeah, you don't limit yourself to any resource constraints.
Perfect. Sounds good. All right. So I'm going to share my screen just to use this as a whiteboard. So here's how I would like to go through this. I'm gonna start by just grounding us in the mission of the product itself. So Google Photos, but also talking about Google itself. What is it that the product is? What is it that Google is trying to accomplish? What is its mission, and what is Google Photos trying to accomplish? I'll then go through just really Porter's 5 forces, and the reason why I want to go through this is almost just like a checklist of all the things I need to keep in mind before I move into the next steps, which is use cases. What are customers after? What do they want from photo storage products like Google Photos, and what it seems Amazon wants to offer now, free storage. And then I'll do, I guess, a competitive analysis, kind of Google Photos versus Amazon Photos, and see and line up strengths and weaknesses. So what I would like us to get to is something along these lines. So Google's Photos, let's just call the new product Amazon Photos, maybe supposing it's part of Prime, and then kind of strengths and weaknesses. And from there, I'd like, once I've lined that up, I think I can come up with a plan, some suggestions, kind of a recommendation at that stage, and then think through some risks and what would success look like at the end. Cool. As a rough structure, how does that sound before I kick things off?
Yeah, this sounds good. Let's get started.
Cool. Sounds good. Google and Google Photos. Google's mission at a high level is to organize the world's information in a way that is accessible and useful to everyone. And Google Photos fits very neatly into that larger mission. It is a way to organize everyone's photos, but specifically, what photos are to people are their memories, their past. And so, from an emotional point of view, it's definitely one of Google's most most valuable assets, because it is helping create an emotional link for people. It is getting a job to be done, an essential job to be done, fulfilled for people. And so from a mission point of view, Google Photos wants to become the almost like the library of people's pasts and memories, and make that very accessible, right? So make one's past very accessible and easily organize it. There are a bunch of amazing features in there. I can think of assistants that creates, auto albums, all the way to, some amazing search features that can search for people's faces and animals or scenes in a nightclub, stuff like that. So it's a very advanced product. And if I were to think, if I jump ahead for a second here and think about a bit about the landscape, the competitive landscape, it almost seems like at one point there was a lot of competition around photo storage. So there were Moments by Facebook and Carousel by Dropbox, but then just in the last couple of years, I think it became very clear that Google Photos is the winner in that market. They simply took over, and I think it's really due to that unlimited storage they've created. They've proposed to everyone for free. It became almost impossible to compete with Google Photos, and I'm sure Google's operating at a loss here. That's probably why in June 2021, a payment plan is going to kick in. And maybe that's why, in this hypothetical world we're working in, Amazon Photos actually wants to introduce free storage as a way for people to opt for it, because they might start paying for Google Photos. So yeah, that's from a landscape point of view, Google Photos seems like now the clear winner. I think they have 1.2 billion people using the product or something like that. If I am to think about, Porter's 5 here doesn't really apply, like alternatives and substitutes. The best thing is there aren't really much, because people can either keep photos on their phones or need to upload them into Google Photos, which, that's how a lot of people do. They have this auto upload going on. Yeah, and so that's one of the advantages of Google Photos. It just does things in the background. And if I were to stop here and think a bit about the customers that use this, I think Android users have a definite advantage. I think people who own a Pixel definitely get special pricing, or 3 months for free, or I think also unlimited storage for the high quality images. So they're privileged in a way. And then all other users also are getting unlimited storage right now, but maybe not for the high quality images, as far as I remember. And moving on to the use cases. So keeping these customers in mind, if I think about the use cases, what customers are looking for are a few things. Like they want, free storage, right? So basically the job to be done here, or the use case, is store. The next one is search. They simply want to search for their old pictures, like find them and be able to find the specific pictures, a specific picture or a specific moment. And I think Google is getting really, really good at that. And then they want to almost like organize and curate, just like they would in the analog world, just create albums and things like that. So keeping these things in mind, and knowing that Google Photos is delivering on all of these, I want to jump into what is it that differentiates Google Photos and Amazon Photos. And really, it's not Amazon Photos yet, it's really Amazon at large. If I were to think about Amazon, one of the things that come to mind is the I'm going to call it generosity, or I don't want to call it cheap, but Amazon is very competitive when it comes to pricing. So it's a very generous company. Prime almost feels like a steal, right? It's almost like irrational to not pay for Amazon Prime at this stage. And so it has this generosity. It also has a great bundle of products with Prime. So Prime, Prime is a great proposition in that sense. If I were to think about Amazon's weaknesses, however, I think from a UX and UI perspective, just as a product, it's a bit confusing. The social aspect is definitely not one of Amazon's forte. Like they don't have a social graph, whereas like photos are very much are a very social product. If I were to think about Google Photos weaknesses, I do think actually also Google doesn't have a strong social graph, hasn't captured that, unfortunately. Another thing I can think of is um, people, just like almost like a consumer apathy, as in people don't always like rely more on their phones to store all of these photos, or maybe on some arcane ways like a USB, etc. So either apathy or ignorance. And that's what keeping people from using Google Photos. And so integrating into phones like Pixel is very powerful. Makes me almost think like, is there a potential with Drive, for instance, jumping to ideas for a bit here, but just, yeah. So like, can we leverage Drive basically to really capture everyone, automatically capture everyone's pictures and get them into the product, like an acquisition mechanism. And then from strength, I think that's the juicy part, as in Google from a machine learning, Google's technology, assistant technology, intelligence around context is second to none. And it's definitely something that can be leveraged here. There's also a very strong ecosystem. Like there's Gmail and Maps and so many. What else? There we have Chrome, other products that people use on a daily basis, everything from trips to notes to etc. So a lot of products, that can be leveraged here to basically enforce Google Photos. And looking at this and everything we've already talked about, what I would like to do is, to start penning down a strategy here to answer your question. So as a PM for Google Photos, knowing that Amazon is about to launch free storage, what would I do? I would want to, so for Amazon's weaknesses, I want to hammer their weaknesses, or like counter, press against their weaknesses, in a sense. I would want to minimize my own weaknesses as a Google Photos product. I want to co-opt, not copy, co-opt or like get inspiration from Amazon's generosity and bundle and prime. And then when it comes to my strengths, I want to leverage my strengths, right? I want to lean into these strengths. And so that's
do you think the weakness, do you think the weakness of social graph or the lack of social graph is something that's really important? If you were to sort of rank the weaknesses, where might you put these different weaknesses?
Yeah, excellent question. That's exactly what I had in mind to do, because there is a lot here. So of all of these things, what should I leverage? What should I minimize, etc. So let's start with minimize, actually, to your question. Between consumer apathy and ignorance and social graph. That's a great question, because it forces me to take a step back here and think about Google Photos goals, right? If we are in a competitive landscape like this hypothetical scenario, then immediately the goal becomes both acquisition, really, actually, revisiting this, not acquisition as much as engagement, as in we want to create, the goal then becomes to create a strategic moat as fast as possible. And by a moat, I mean something that's very defensible, so that Amazon Photos cannot, just create another commodity product for free storage and take over our market. And so of these two, between consumer apathy and social graph, I think, we will always compete on, we will always build the same tools as Amazon. Everyone will build the same tools to get people to upload their photos to their system. But a social graph is not something that's easily replicable. So I would want to focus on that primarily. Yeah, that's how I would prioritize these two.
So what do you think is the moat for Google Photos today, and what do you think is the moat for Amazon?
Good question. I think the moat for Google Photos today has been, for the longest time, that it has captured a lot of people's existing photos, so that the cost of moving one's photos is high. So it's almost like this. It almost feels like this is the only moat. Like the moat right now is just convenience, or the pain of moving my photos to somewhere else. And that's my opinion, is that it is not enough of a moat. We need to create another moat layer, or whatever we want to call it. And that's where the strategy comes in. Yeah.
And then
For Amazon.
Right. So I was going to ask, as you were going to go in the direction of, you're not the PM for Amazon, and we don't really know what Amazon Photos looks like. But if you were to guess, what might Amazon's moat, like if you were a PM, what do you think they would try to make the moat?
Yeah. I do think they would double down on this generosity / bundle advantage they have. So things that could come to mind is if you start storing your pictures for free with us, you might have a discount on your Prime membership. Your Prime membership costs you less. That's pretty extreme, to be honest. Rather, we could print a photo book for free for you. Amazon probably already has KDP, Kindle Direct Publishing, so they could do that. Whereas Google Photos charges to print all of these pictures today, right? So that is the kind of edge that Amazon would have, really, offering things for free or for a very competitive price.
Great. So thanks for breaking that down. So now it looks like, so you've underlined social graph. Is that the weakness you sort of want to focus on?
I do. I do think it's one of them, but I do think it's a multi-prone approach. So the way I would line this up is the following: something like this. So where we could even add actually an extra column here. So call this pros and cons. Maybe we won't go too much into details, but basically what I keep in mind as I go through this is, one, I want to make sure that we're building a strategic moat, right? So that's what I'm going to evaluate each of these ideas based on. And number two, I want to lean into my strengths, lean into Google's strengths, right? And make sure we're playing to these. And so ideas that come to mind are inspired by this. One, when it comes to the social graph, for instance, one thing that I find strange is that I can identify people in Google, but I don't have their Gmail, right? So so I don't have their Gmail, and Google doesn't know who they are. So they don't. So almost like asking people. Yeah, I feel I'm rushing into this one. I'll take if that's okay, Stephen. I'll take a minute just to gather my ideas here. How does that sound?
Yeah, I'm Kevin.
Kevin, sorry.
No worries.
No worries. Let me
go ahead. No worries. Take your time.
Kevin, I'll take a minute to think through this. Thanks. Awesome. Okay, great. So here are the three things. Apologies for the name thing. So here are the things that come to mind. The first one is, I'm just going to thematize them. So the first one I'd call social intelligence, as in understanding relationships between people present in pictures. The reason why this is important is because we could build almost like social streak systems. If I'm in a picture very often with someone, Google could deduce that this person is important to me, and so create an album or suggest things that are truly that just highlight my relationship with this person versus just tell me what happened a year ago, right? And so almost like double down or highlight important relationships. I'll keep it broad for a second here, and we can double click into it if you'd like. The second one would be something around contextual intelligence, and this leverages this part that I spoke about earlier, which is the ecosystem. For instance, if I'm in Maps, right, and I'm visiting, let's say Las Vegas again, terrible example. Google Photos could show me basically the last time I was in Vegas. Rather, Maps could show me like the photos of the last time I was in Vegas. I'm sure there are some cons here regarding like privacy, and I know that there's almost like a China wall between the different between the different products at Google, so I would keep that in mind. But the last time you were in Vegas would be a kind, something to increase that contextual intelligence, because that's something Amazon will never offer me. Amazon doesn't have access to Maps. Same for, I'd say, other things is like time. So Google has notes, for instance. Maybe it could remind me of a picture I took, maybe as a reminder. If I can tag a picture, it's a loose idea, but effectively relating maybe notes in some way, connecting notes to photos. It's a blurry idea. I'll pass on this one and scratch it for now. But basically, an idea to connect more of Google Photos. And the last one is this one: inspiration, and specifically the bundle, the Prime bundle thing idea. Google has Google One today, and so bundling photos into Google One in a very advantageous way, though people have to pay for it, would be an essential move in my opinion here. And I think the three of these would be like the basis, the starting strategy to get at this and to create the defenses against the risk of free storage proposed by Amazon.
Let's double click into the highlight important relationships. I'm not really clear what that means.
Yeah, that sounds good. So um, what I meant by that is if you click on search in Google Photos, you'll see people's faces right on top as circles. And Google Photos would even ask you to, whether this is the right person in that photo, etc. But effectively, Google Photos recognizes people in photos. And you can even name them. So I've called my friend David, etc. What is interesting in this case is to go a level deeper into that. And so either one of two things. One, on the main page of photos, right now there are stories. So what happened a year ago, what happened 2 years ago on this day. Instead, highlighting what I've done with friends at this time, what I've done in friends at a specific place, or how long it's been, or even statistics about, you've taken that many pictures with this person versus that many pictures with this other person. And almost like a Snapchat's streak system showing me effectively how my friendships stack up against each other, how much time I'm spending with people. The second one, Google Photos has a messaging option now where you can message other people. It would be interesting to just, in these messages, pre-populate some messages for the people who matter most to me. So if it's David, and if I identify them as David, maybe link it to their Gmail, and then be able to send an album on a specific day to Gmail and send me a notification to David, my friend, telling him on this day we spent, this time together in Colombia and we did X and Y and Z. And so auto-creating memories, not only for my viewing, but to connect with people. And so going a step further than just creating memories and curating these to help me connect with people around memories. I think that is the shift there. Yeah, that's what I had in mind for this one.
Okay, that's really interesting. I'm kind of curious which one you might pick.
Of all of these, that's a great question. So that's where the pros and cons comes in. I do think there's the one that jumps at me from a cons perspective is this whole privacy around contextual intelligence. I'm not sure how much, I'm not knowledgeable enough about how much different Google products can talk to each other. So I'd be a bit wary about this one. The pros, however, is that, from a strategic mode perspective, it's truly, very defensible, very hard to replicate, right? So that's one. Google one, I think it's it's almost an easy one. Now I'm questioning whether these are the right columns. It's almost like, effort. We could rename them to effort, risk, and then impact, something like that. That'll make things easier. And so very hard to replicate. This is, what is that? That's, I guess, impact / strategic importance. So from an effort perspective, I do think this one is kind of medium. I don't think it's too hard to implement. Contextual intelligence, this is a high one. Google One Photos, this is an easy one, so low. Risk is medium in this case because we would be asking users approval at each stage. I do think the importance is high in this case, the impact is high. Very hard to replicate, this would be high, but the risk is high as well. And then Google One Photos, the risk is low and the impact would be medium rather than low. So this just gives me, a high level idea about social intelligence being the idea, the thing to go for. But I would still, in a given strategy, I would want to, so I would suggest social intelligence as the thing we would start with, but I would want contextual intelligence as something we look into as well. Because it is kind of longer term investment that can truly differentiate our product in the future. Yeah.
So social intelligence is sort of like nostalgia kind of feature where you're using machine learning also. Okay, interesting. Yeah, you did point out that that was one of Google's strengths on the Photos team. Great, yeah. So in the past, Google has definitely tried to add social aspects to its products like Google Circles and Google Plus, right? What sort of learning lessons might you think we can take from that and make sure we don't fail in the same realm when we're trying to build these sort of social features here?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm sure there's a post-mortem somewhere internally about this. I'll take a few seconds to think through this one. So a few things actually that come to mind, having worked at Facebook for a while. When it comes to sharing and to social dynamics, there are actually some key principles that social products use and leverage. I'll start with a couple of lessons that Google needs to keep and would need to keep in mind in this case. One, the importance of building on an existing use case rather than building a completely new product that almost is parachuted onto people. And so in this case, it would be instead of building a Google Plus, rather building on top of something that already has a lot of value and that people are using. So Google Photos, for instance, right? Number two is keeping it simple. Circles did introduce this idea of being able to create circles, or Google Plus introduced circles, which was great and made a lot of sense. However, there was an amount of investment to kick things off, right? And so in this case, we would need that single core feature that we built to be as simple as possible, something that's very easy. And I think our technology, our assistant, the social intelligence would help us get there. The third one is mimicry. Social networks thrive on mimicry. So, and I think that's one that's going to be hard to solve in this case. Unfortunately, because Google Photos is a very private product, it isn't a social public product, and so we would need to create either give people a way to export whatever artifact they create within Google Photos, or even create a mini network of sorts within Google Photos around friends. So like almost like Google Photos could become this new smaller social network, a private social network of sorts. But these are, so building on an existing use case, keeping it simple, and mimicry are the three things I would keep in mind.
Great. And do you think that your social intelligence feature here hits on these that you've just mentioned?
Yeah, great question. I do think it builds on an existing use case. I do think it keeps it simple. When it comes to mimicry, we could go into a complete tangent on product design basically, but there's more to bake into here to make sure that there is mimicry, because at this stage, so the assistant will suggest an album for me to share with my friend David based on their Gmail. But then after that, what happens, right? Will David share back with me? We'll have a conversation, but no one outside of this interaction will actually do that. So there's more to dig into there. Maybe leveraging photos where there are multiple people and creating a conversation with multiple people. That would help with the viral factor.
Okay, great. So I think you've already mentioned some risks here. If you want, feel free to mention some more. But if that was everything, why don't we move on to success?
Yeah, I think I've covered enough risk, especially around this. Using several Google products as part of the strategy. When it comes to success and the way I would evaluate whether this is the right next move, what I would do is go back to where we started. So we spoke about engagement as the goal. What Google Photos needs to accomplish now to defend itself against any future strategic threat, such as Amazon, etc. And so, looking back, how would we measure success, right? If it's engagement, what is engagement in this case? Is it simply there are quite a few things that define engagement in Google Photos, and it's not just scrolling through the photos on the main page. It's probably search or sending an album to a friend. It is even like new people who download Google Photos after a friend shares. And so that would track virality. And this would be, these almost track, almost like a funnel, these steps that I would want to look at. And these would guarantee that people are investing more time in the product. It's not simply that they're opening the app, or that they're looking for a photo, or that they're passively uploading things. They're actively invested in the photo, and that's the difference that we want to introduce here. And then from a more, so these are the actual actions, and then from a more lagging, as a lagging metric, I would go for attention. So week on week, users who do any of the, who engage, basically do any of the actions I listed above, is this number going up or down? I think that's how I would determine whether this is successful or not. One last point maybe is about the execution. I would start maybe in a single country, test for a couple of months, keep the test small, and see the results. Yeah.
Great. Thanks for this great mock interview. I think we can pause here. And before I give you some feedback, I'd love to hear if you might have any self-reflection on how you think the mock interview did, and just any general advice and tips for people who are watching.
Yeah, thank you. Let's see. I do feel from a structure perspective, I almost lost sight of the objective here in a few spots, and I think I spent a bit too much time just going into details, which I'm not sure were very relevant to just answering the question. So there was a loss of focus at a few moments. Besides that, I think I finally got us to the right place. I don't know if I was leading enough versus being led by your questions, so I was a bit self-conscious about that. Yeah, but in general, I'm happy with my answer.
Great. Yeah, I definitely felt like you did a good job leading. So that's a good signal there for you. And you started off by whiteboarding, which is excellent, especially during a virtual interview. You talked about Porter's 5 forces, use cases. You tied the mission into the problem, and you spoke about the moats, which I thought was really important. And you also thought about, you're not a PM at Amazon, but you also thought about what Amazon, potentially, if you put yourself in their shoes, what they might do to create a moat for Amazon photos. And one thing that I really liked was that you called out privacy. This is a very important theme for photos, and I was very happy that even though you mentioned a social feature, you did call out that privacy was important. I think that just one improvement that I would call out is, or maybe two, is maybe dive a little bit deeper into some of the designs. So maybe walk me through, if this is my first time using this feature, what does it look like? I'll give you some credit here. Like, you definitely gave me the chance to say, like, hey, like if we have time, we can double click here. So you definitely gave me the option there as the interviewer to look at that. But that's one piece of feedback. And then the second and last one is, even though this is just like a mock interview, if this were a real interview, I'm sure you would spend some more time maybe pausing and asking some more questions and allowing me to just make sure that we're on the same page.
Yeah, that's great feedback. Yeah.
All in all, this is a great mock interview. I'm really happy that you took your time to share your expertise with the audience. And before we wrap up, do you have any final advice for people who are watching?
Yeah, I was thinking about that today, reflecting on how important it is to get to the point where it feels like fun to just do these interviews, or to just prep for all of this. To keep that in mind, like if it's not fun anymore, maybe there's something wrong, or one needs to take a break. I think it's super important.
Definitely, wise words. Thanks so much. And for the audience watching at home, good luck with your upcoming PM interview.
Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons below to let us know that this video was valuable for you. And of course, check out hundreds more videos just like this at tryexponent.com. Thanks for watching, and good luck on your upcoming interview.